What Happens in the Dark focuses on Lily and Safa, who used to be best friends in childhood. Now they're adults and they've drifted apart. Lily is the nation's favorite breakfast TV presenter. And Safa, she used to be a respected journalist, but she's reeling from a recent fall from grace. And one day she goes into work and her editor calls her into his office and says Lily was seen on TV with suspicious bruises on her body. And Safa decides to try to reconnect with her childhood friend to try to find out what's happening. And Lily says it's completely innocent, there's nothing to worry about. But then a few days later, the police are called to Lily's house and they find her with a bloodied knife and a dead body at her feet. And so Safa decides to start her own investigation, but she is not prepared for what her investigation will uncover. And so I would describe it as a thriller, but it's also a courtroom drama that asks what happens when a victim of violence decides to hit back. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on POV actually, because so in Take It Back, I had lots of different POVs. You know, there was Jodie, there was Safa, there were the boys. And in What Happens in the Dark, it's mainly Safa. And then there's a little bit of Lily kind of sprinkled throughout as well. And, you know, most people would say like that's quite odd to have maybe two or three scenes from Lily's perspective. Um, but I've always felt comfortable kind of hooking the story to one character. But then obviously when the character is not in the scene, you know, she doesn't understand what's happening. And so sometimes I've kind of come out of that POV into Lily's, which is quite unorthodox, I think. Either you have a bit more and it's a bit more balanced, or you know, you peg it to one character. For me, it's who speaks to me most strongly. And so often it's, you know, maybe this shows my lack of skill, but often it's the character that's most like me. You know, a South Asian woman who's struggling with identity, who has some of the childhood experiences that I had. For example, Safa Salim, the main character in What Happens in the Dark, used to be a young language broker. And what I mean by that is when she was coming of age, her parents couldn't speak English. So she had to negotiate very complicated systems on behalf of her parents. And one of the consequences of that basically results in one of her traumas in childhood. And that comes from partly my experience. So when I was younger, I would have to, you know, negotiate the NHS, you know, the National Health Service in the UK, the benefit system, council tax, all of these complicated things as an 8-year old, as a 10-year old. And it was really difficult. And I kind of wanted to tell that story as well. And so again, it comes back to this thing where different threads of experiences and stories come together in a narrative. And so Safa seemed to be, for me, the most compelling character through which to tell the story, but there is a little bit of Lily sprinkled through as well. I love writing dialogue. I think it's is probably the part that comes to me most easily. And in fact, I've thought about script writing or screenwriting because most of it is dialogue. And I have tried a little bit, but actually, it's such a different medium, it's such a different art. And as a novelist, you're not necessarily equipped to become a script writer. And so I haven't really explored that area. But yeah, for me, dialogue is super easy. Characters are just very well formed. And one of the benefits for me is I have a very large extended family. And so, with truth be told, I can't remember what the line was now. I think it was "Oh my days," because when I was younger, I used to hear kids saying "Oh my days" quite a lot, which was kind of came full circle because it's quite an older person thing to say. And then the young kids were saying it. And then I asked my nephews, do you ever say "Oh my days"? And they said, no, not anymore. And so it's quite useful to have nieces and nephews of different ages, you know, ranging from 1 to 30 now, to go and kind of sense check things and the language that I'm using. I'm sure I've got it wrong, you know, in certain scenes, but yeah, that's the part that comes to me really easily.